In episode 511, Ryan and Jose are joined by David Blair for another book club of blood. This time we cover New Murders in the Rue Morgue. This is the Clive Barker Podcast, where longtime fans Ryan and Jose interview guests, bring you the news, and take deep dives into Barker-related stuff. This episode is sponsored by Don Bertram's Celebrate Imagination. Don Bertram is a longtime friend of Clive and advocate of his art. But Don's unique and inspiring paintings are for sale, and over 50% of the proceeds go to the Arts and Medicine program at the Texas Children's Cancer Center. There's even a paver in Washington, D.C. representing Celebrate Imagination. We're thrilled that this worthy cause is sponsoring our podcast again this year, and we hope that you'll consider looking over his Pinterest page and commissioning a painting of your own. For commissions, Don requires no money down, and there will be no obligation on your part. You can also head over to the Etsy shop to buy one of his books, like A Chimney Sweep's Tale, Celebrate Imagination, or The Imaginaries. Follow the link in the show notes, or click on the side banner, and let's see what's new with Don Bertram today. If you go to Don Bertram's Facebook page, you can see his newest paintings, Date Night, Guardian Angel, and Shooting Star. Let's welcome our other sponsor, Ed Martinez, and his YouTube channel. Lots of great special effects videos and Barker-related content. What's the latest from Ed? Hey, if you want to help us out, support us on Patreon at patreon.com/BarkerCast589. Our subscribers will get exclusive access to content not available anywhere else, like our Collector's Corner video series, rare Barker videos, and early behind-the-scenes stuff. Our supporters get to help us choose episode topics and even join us on the podcast. Our supporters also get access to the exclusive channel in our Discord server. We'll be forever grateful if you consider helping us out and subscribing to our Patreon. We owe everything to this circle of magicians, so let's give a shout out to our Patreon supporters and see what's new on Patreon. Thank you so much to David Anderson, Eric Vanderholt, Daniel Elvin, Amanda Stewart, Bradley Gartz, Matthew Batten, Bennett, Jesse, and Clara Leslie. And of course, thank you to our returning sponsor, Don Bertram Celebrate Imagination, and our sponsor, Ed Martinez's YouTube channel. Most currently, for our Patreon backers, we've got Clive Barker's Creepypasta and Haunted Legend of Ben Drowned. So this was Jose doing a kind of a deep dive into Clive Barker and what would have been if he had continued on with this Creepypasta project. Also an extended interview with Peter Atkins. Texas Frightmare Weekend Memories is there. And then Jose is also working on a new one, the Clive Barker manga project. So this is like in Japan, people did comic adaptations of Clive Barker stories like the Hellbound Heart and some Books of Blood stories. Well, welcome. This is episode number 511 of the Clive Barker Podcast, and today we're going to be talking about the Book Club of Blood, New Murders in the Rue Morgue, the last story on Books of Blood, Volume 2. And Jose and I are joined today by David Blair. Welcome, David.
Hello. Thanks for having me. Always impressed by your bookshelves behind you and all the little knickknacks you got there. So
the lighting on them is awesome.
Yeah.
I'm doing Halloween lighting now, so yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's right. I got to turn on my Halloween lighting, too. Here, let's see. Spooky blue.
'Tis the season.
Yeah.
I want to do a quick Kickstarter update before we get into our Book Club of Blood. Later on, we will thank everybody in the Kickstarter because that's a lot to have to make David sit through. We do want to thank everybody that backed us and got cool stuff. And I was up until late last night cataloging them all into our spreadsheet so I know who got what. And I'm going to drag a table into here and start organizing things and stuff like that. But yeah, we got to $2,064 of our $1,000 goal. So we hit a lot of stretch goals. We're going to continue the Book Club of Blood all the way through the end of Volume 6. And we'll thank everybody properly, but I'm feeling pretty grateful, and it was a nice run, and it's really helping us out to continue.
It sure does. It sure does.
The longer this podcast goes on, the more expensive it gets. And so that helps.
That's a natural progression.
Yeah. And so today we're talking about New Murders in the Rue Morgue, which is a rare kind of a thing for Clive Barker because he doesn't typically write a sequel to somebody else's story.
usually he likes to come up with his own ideas and doesn't do adaptations or sequels.
That's right.
I mean, he was entertaining doing The Mummy, which would have been a completely different take from the old movie, right? Yeah. So
30s. Yep.
So this is kind of written as a sequel or a spiritual sequel. I think it's depending on whether the story is true or not which is not clear, but it's based on Edgar Allan Poe's The Murders in the Rue Morgue, written in 1841 by Edgar Allan Poe. And I listened to the audiobook of that one just to prepare again, because I hadn't read it in a long time. And it, of course, stars the, detective C. Auguste Dupin, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
C. Auguste Dupin. Some people call Edgar Allan Poe the father of the mystery novel.
Mm-hmm.
And I think The Murders in the Rue Morgue was one of the things that really became popular. And I think he did not just one story with Auguste Dupin, but I think he might have done two, now that I think about it. It's been a while since I went back into Edgar Allan Poe's work.
I think there were several.
It might be, yeah. I think I got that feeling too from my memory. I used to have the complete works of Edgar Allan Poe, which I guess a lot of us grew up reading Poe at least at some point.
I really liked Edgar Allan Poe except for Tamerlane. I hated that one. I couldn't crack it. I guess I couldn't figure it out.
He wrote the story with Auguste Dupin, The Mysteries of the Rue Morgue, and then I think also The Mystery of Marie Roget and The Purloined Letter. It's about a letter that was stolen and stuff. So I think those are the three stories that Edgar Allan Poe created. It's a pretty entertaining one to close this volume.
So does Auguste Dupin predate Sherlock Holmes?
I think so. Let me see.
It seems like it.
It would, by a few decades.
Yeah, right. I think you're right.
40 years?
Yeah. Auguste Dupin preceded Sherlock Holmes by 46 years. You're right. So that's why people call Poe the father of the mystery novel. In these stories, he always he has a friend that they're talking about. He does use the same kind of tropes that Sherlock Holmes does. He thinks outside the box. Is very
reasoning and logic.
Analytical. Yeah, exactly. Just like Sherlock Holmes, There's a funny joke about Sherlock Holmes and Watson are camping out in the woods, and then they're looking up, and Sherlock Holmes says, Watson, look up at the sky. What do you get from all these stars that we're seeing right now? He's like, well, there's a constellation of Orion. And then Sherlock Holmes says, Watson, you fool, someone stole our tent. I messed up the joke a little bit, but that's basically the broad strokes of it. Where Dupin is a triumph of logic, it's almost like in this one, there's not a through line through discovering the mystery and then a triumph of logic. It's more like a surrender to emotions and decline and all that stuff. So
it seems like a resignation of the end, the whole winter. And they talk about the age of the people, how they've changed since they've been young, and what happens to the characters, especially. They kind of resign themselves to it's over, an inevitable end.
Their original story, a good third of the story is just the narrator bragging about how logical Dupin is, right? He's going on and on about, and when I first met him, then he could tell what I was thinking about this particular actor just by my body language, and that goes on for a really long time. And then he read this newspaper article to me, and then they proceeded to have him read the entire newspaper article about the murders. And then, then he starts investigating and it gets into the actual story. But it all takes place in a couple of rooms and him just describing things and figuring out what happened. But I don't think they even caught the ape. I think that at the end of that story, he just figured out.
They just find out that it was an ape. Yeah.
Yeah.
But in this one, going back to what David brought up, it's true. The story takes place in the winter and it's snowed in like Paris. Yeah. And all the main characters in the story are aging people. They're usually in their 69 or 73 or 70 years old.
Which makes they come from old enough to be grandchildren, or for him to be a great nephew of Auguste Dupin.
Uh-huh. Yeah. He brings up that story. He does a little bit of a summarization of what Edgar Allan Poe's story was, and it turns out that yes, it would have been an orangutan. Being older people near the end of their life and in a frozen city it just makes this more nostalgic, I guess. There's a lot of nostalgia about what Paris used to be and what it is now, because, for example, this happens to many cities, especially in Europe, but there's always been a time when the medieval city ends up being destroyed by the ravages of time, fires and stuff like that, because back in the day, those cities like London used to be all wooden houses and stuff. And a lot of that never made it to our century. There's been several renovations of Paris, to the city, some of them in the 1800s by Haussmann, and then some by Charles de Gaulle in the 20th century, where they changed a lot of stuff and in the city. It's funny because he says that his great grand uncle or something told the story to Edgar Allan Poe in Richmond, Virginia, because his great uncle liked to travel. And one day he found this guy called Eddie at a bar in Richmond that had just won this competition, right? Because I think in real life, yes, Edgar Allan Poe first won a prize for his short story Manuscript in a Bottle. That's when his great uncle meets him, and he tells Eddie all these stories that he knows from traveling around the world. And in one of those, I guess the fragments of the murders in the Rue Morgue was also conveyed to Edgar Allan Poe, who later created the story. So that's Lewis's claim to fame. That's our main character, Lewis. He's also a painter.
In that story is that he says he tried to find the Rue Morgue and he couldn't. Like it doesn't, either it got absorbed by other roads or it just disappeared or it never existed.
Didn't even exist, maybe.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, the Rue Morgue never existed. It was just morgue, of course, being the location where we put our dead and stuff. So it's basically the Rue Morgue is like the street of death, right? So it's a little bit of a play on words there. Although there was no Rue Morgue, there was a Paris morgue that was very famous in the 19th century. Sometimes they would put on display, they had like an area with glass windows where they would put on display unknown bodies that were found. Like vagrants and stuff, so people could see if they could identify who they were. And of course, this called for a lot of like voyeurs and people to go in and peek at the bodies and look at, because they would have the bodies on display behind glass and like inside a room that had a big window. So that's kind of creepy that I find out about. The Paris morgue used to do that. Never Googled the Russian morgues underneath Moscow. Those are terrible. I read an article once about all the people who die in Moscow and stuff, all the vagrants and people who die in the cold or, alcoholics or people who are found on the street. There's like an underground morgue under Moscow where they put all those bodies and they have them in storage trying to identify who they are. And they got hundreds and hundreds of bodies down there at any given time. So that's really creepy.
Yeah.
But
people like that. People like taking tours of the catacombs and seeing the skulls.
Yeah.
Yeah. In Paris.
Gallows, people, when they had public executions, it was an event. People would come out and have lunch and watch somebody get hanged.
Yeah.
People are decapitated. Kind of macabre in that. Yeah. So when people would go to the morgue and press their face up against the glass, look at the dead bodies, that kind of fits in with people. Not just the time, too.
Lewis gets a message from Catherine, his old friend. Catherine's brother, Philippe, has been arrested and needs his help, right? So he goes over there to Paris, a place where he used to live with his friends many years ago. And then he became a painter and became a famous painter. Now he doesn't paint anymore, but he's there to see what's going on with Philippe.
And it sounds like he's in America.
Yes, New York.
He's from America. Yeah. There's a part where he says something about missing Fort Lauderdale. So
like he liked the climate there or something.
Lewis goes to Paris to meet with Catherine because Philippe is in jail, and he meets with Catherine. And Catherine is this kind of aloof lady, isn't she? She's very glacial, I would say.
and Philippe is her brother.
And Philippe is her brother. That's right. Her kid brother.
And it seems like Lewis was like an old friend, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's right. Yeah, in their youth, back when Paris was still a pleasure dome, they used to have a lot of fun there in the apartment where he meets Catherine. Is this apartment in a small island in the Seine called Ile of St. Louis. It's an old apartment that belongs to the two brothers and sisters. That's not where the murder happened.
No.
So the
brother kept kind of like a little bachelor pad apartment.
He mentions that his sister kept that place too neat, and so he wanted a place where he can spread out. So he goes to visit Philippe to talk to him about what happened because he's being accused of murder. And he's not saying anything that explains what happened. He's just saying that he's very sorry about what happened and he just wants to die. And he's kind of shutting down. He doesn't want to explain what happened. And so that, of course, puts all the suspicions on Philippe.
Yeah.
But the brutal murder is almost as brutal as the murder in the original Murders in the Rue Morgue story. So this woman, his girlfriend, I would say, who was 19. So there's this thing about this guy being 70 and he's out with 19-year-olds, which is kind of weird. Yeah. So that already kind of takes away some sympathy for Philippe.
But you do learn that he was really in love with her, or it seemed like it, and so.
Yeah.
There's a lot of emotion there. Yes.
His redheaded Natalie.
Yeah. That's right. Natalie. And so he ends up saying that, I don't want to talk about it. I just want to die. Lewis goes to talk to the sheriff, of course,
Inspector.
Inspector, thank you. He's convinced that Philippe did it. And then he says, well, Philippe is kind of an old man though. Like this woman was like, her muscles were exposed. She had blood everywhere. Her eyes were gouged and I don't know, scalp was pulled out and whatever. It's like, she was all sliced up. And he's like, he's an old man. He couldn't have done it. But then the inspector's like, but le cœur humain, the human heart, you never know what. Basically, the inspector thinks it was a crime of passion. Yeah. And even to some extent.
And some of their theories were like that because he's so old, he got really mad because he couldn't perform,
right.
That's why. Just went into a fit of rage because of that. Which is pretty lame theory, right? I mean, usually people would just be embarrassed. They wouldn't go on a murderous rage.
Yeah, and Lewis is not impressed by this. He calls him the Weasel, Inspector Weasel.
Yeah.
And he is so unimpressed by his
Marais, right? Marais. We get later.
He's so unimpressed by the guy because he's basically like, whatever. Yeah. This guy really doesn't care. He's like so unlike his ancestor. He's almost repulsed by this guy.
Yeah. But Lewis doesn't really have these kind of logical superpowers like Auguste Dupin either. He's really kind of just a regular guy. He's a, famous painter, I guess.
Yeah, he just has that connection to the Detective Lupin, which is kind of like a little bit of a family history, but also kind of becomes almost like a burden throughout the story. Because not only is that the motivation that makes Catherine ask him to investigate what happened because you're his friend, obviously Catherine knows that the cops are not they think they got their man, but she knows her brother. She thinks he didn't do it. And that's why Lewis decides to go and talk to some of his friends and see if he can find out what happened. If there's any other guy or enemies or anybody that could have done this.
So he talks to Jacques Soulal, his friend. It seems like kind of an old drunk.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Missing a lot of teeth. And when he was trying to talk to him, he was already soaked with cognac.
Yeah.
He really didn't have anything to add.
Right. Eventually and he wouldn't even say, like, he wanted to get him to say, well, like, do you think he did it? And he's like, I don't know. Who can say? And just keep buying me drinks. Yeah.
And at that bar, there's an interesting detail. Behind the bar, there's a lot of clippings and stuff and old pictures.
Yeah.
And stories of like newspaper articles. And there's one picture of a bunch of people standing next to a dead gorilla. So the gorilla is hanging upside down. His head is kind of touching the floor. And obviously something happened there. It's a gorilla, not an orangutan. So it's not, there's no pictures in the time that 1800s or whatever, but he sees that and it kind of, again, brings up that memory of the monkey and the mysteries of Murders in the Rue Morgue. And it's like, do you know what that is? And Jacques Soulal is like, who knows?
Yeah.
So another bit of like,
he asks the bartender and the bartender's just some young kid. He's like, I don't know, whatever.
Soulal does mention that there was one guy who hung around Philippe every once in a while and he never got a good look at him, but it was this big lumbering dude who always smells like perfume. And he might have been attracted to Natalie. And he mentions something that's a little detail. It's like, but he did smell a lot of perfume, implying that he thought that guy might have been gay or something.
Yeah. And he had a mincing step, right?
Yeah.
Which is like, you think about an orangutan walking, probably going like this and he's got little short legs.
Now we have someone to look for, right? So now we have this weird guy. So Lewis decides to go through the city and go to the apartment where the murder happened. Once he gets there, of course, the door is locked. He can't go in, but he just wanted to go there just to get the feeling of where it happened. And then he goes to talk to Catherine to give her an update on what happened to Philippe. And she says, yeah, well, I have the key for that. And I did go there once. I saw a shape, like a shadow, and it was a man, and he was holding like a glinting thing, a razor, straight razor.
Yeah.
And so I screamed and I left. And he's like, oh, okay. And I think, does she also mention that he smelled a perfume? Cause that's,
he had a big great overcoat and a scarf that she didn't really see his face very well.
Yeah. Covering his face.
But he was a very large man. And the smell perfume.
Yeah. So the plot starts to thicken here, of course. And then I think at some point Lewis does decide to go back to the apartment because Philippe needed to get some clothes while he's in prison. And Catherine was going to do that, but then she got scared when she saw that man, and he decides to grab the key and go to the apartment. Yeah, so he does go to visit the apartment, and he's there. He's grabbing some clothes for Philippe, and then in the shadows in the corner of the room, he hears a noise, and he does see someone step out of the shadows. And it is the man. It is the shape, right? So,
and he smells the overwhelming perfume smell, and
so he's back at the scene of the crime. He doesn't say anything. He's like, "Hey, what are you doing here?" You know, Lewis confronts him, and the man just stands there, and he sees that the man is crying, right? He starts crying, these thick tears, and then he just runs. He tries to follow him, but you know, obviously that man is there. He's feeling bad about something. So did this happen in a place called Rue de Martyr, the Street of the Martyrs?
Yeah. That's where he had his little bachelor pad.
Yeah. That's a little place that climbs up from the square called the Pigalle up to Montmartre, which is where they have the Sacré-Cœur Basilica. The city itself is also a major player in this. It's almost like Paris is this city, like a center of culture, and it's seen as this wonderful, beautiful old city with a lot of nostalgia, but also it's a city where a lot of bad things happen every day. So behind that facade of beautiful cultural city, there's the underbelly of Paris, which is the human tragedy, right? There's things happening every day. Like there's this murder, Natalie. There's going to be more murders as the story goes on. And even though the city is beautiful, it has monsters. And
they also talk about how before the war in the 30s, when they're there, they talked about a perfect summer or a perfect day. You know, they have this kind of rose tinted goggle, and they even mentioned the story that day probably wasn't that great, but at least 1 hour of it was good, or, you know, one day out of the month.
Yeah. Like memories are always, we tend to idealize and perfect things in our mind.
So does he go back to his apartment for a little bit, the place he's staying, or does he go back to Catherine? No, he takes the
clothes
to Philippe. Yeah.
Well, he questions him about what happened.
Really happened.
Yeah, he says, Philippe, here's your clothes, and there was a man there with a big beard. Do you know who he was? And he's like, no, I don't want to talk about it. Before he goes to give the clothes to Philippe, he does stop by to talk to Catherine, and Catherine says that the ape man was there. He trashed the other place, the other apartment that belonged to
I think
the two
that
brothers.
Was before he went to pick up Philippe's clothes. He talked to Catherine.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's when he goes to give the clothes to Philippe and tells him, we got to find out this man. He attacked Catherine. He had a razor. He destroyed the apartment. So, oh no, he would have never done that. He would have never done that. Mentioned something like he was trained not to do that. But then he also becomes very emotional and starts saying that Natalie was a whore. You know, it says she was a whore, you know, implying that she betrayed him with that man. Yeah. And he gets really emotional. He starts screaming. And then he points the finger at Philippe and says, this is all your fault. You began this with all your stories, you know, your damn Dupin, you know. And
which is, I don't buy that. It seems like such a stretch just because he had some old story that his grandfather told him doesn't make him responsible. I mean, how could you go to all the lengths of all the things that Philippe did, right? To train this orangutan or as
right.
as
like
Pope
Philippe had
called him,
issues.
orangutan, right? The way he spelled it. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty messed up. I mean, why was he so obsessed with this story? And why, how did it help him in his life to have this trained orangutan?
Good question. Who knows why obsessions are born? Sometimes an obsession starts and people just kind of fall into that spiral. And I think that might have happened to Philippe. Yeah. But I think Philippe is also, he's kind of like a Dr. Frankenstein in a way, or a Dr. Moreau. A little bit.
Yeah. He wanted to see if it was possible. He was trying to prove his friend wrong, I guess. Lewis?
Yeah, and he ended up created the monster's own demise.
Before the cops take him away, when he starts getting really riled up, he says that there are beasts, and some of them are circus animals. They have no brains. They're born victims. And then there are others. Catherine's apartment was trashed when he comes back to Catherine, and then he looks out the window and he sees a man down outside in the street, and he's like looking up at the window, and he just raises his arms as if he was like requesting understanding or forgiveness. And then he just walks away, but he walks away with a weird gait, right? Says it was the gait of an upright beast who had been taught to walk, and now without its master was losing the trick of it.
And there are times when he just sort of forgets his training and just kind of walks like an orangutan.
Yeah.
But
and
the
so after this
walk is his practiced human walk.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's when it hits him, when he sees him walk away like a monkey. He's like, oh my God, it was an ape all along. And he goes and he says, I need to talk to Philippe. So I think he goes back to see Philippe. And at this point, I think the inspector is getting a little tired of Lewis, but he has to lie. He says, well, his sister is dying. I need to talk to him. It's really important. And then he goes to talk to Lewis, because of his stories. He wanted to see if there was any truth to that. And then he blames Natalie for seducing the ape. That's why he's so angry about it. He says, that whore, she seduced it. And then the whole premise here is that we're made to believe that the monkey was jealous, and then he murdered the woman.
He's an ape, not a monkey.
More
Monkeys
than
have
being
tails.
Yeah, right, ape. Yes, ape. Thank you.
Is he gorilla or orangutan?
Orangutan.
Yeah.
In this story, he's an orangutan as well. When they mentioned that the monkey killed a woman because he was jealous.
Ape.
Yes, ape. Sorry, ape. The implication is that the ape was jealous of Natalie being in a relationship with Philippe. But I think I took it almost the other way around. Like the monkey wanted to be with Philippe, his master, and he was distracted with a woman. So I wonder what the jealousy was. Who was the object of the jealousy? Because at some point, I don't understand if he killed a woman because he wanted to be closer to his master, or if it was just because he was jealous of his master. Or
did Philippe order him to kill her? Because she was.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was thinking too. Yeah, is because Philippe was so angry because he was so jealous because she got fooled by into thinking that this ape was a human. And
one interesting thing, in this book by Gary Hoppenstand, he talks about another option here. He says that at some point we don't know if Philippe really killed Natalie in an act of passion. That he thinks that it's kind of open to interpretation. I didn't think that, but that's an interesting take.
I don't think I agree with Gary Hoppenstand.
Yeah,
because I think that
seems too brutal.
Yeah, exactly. All of the clues sort of point to something with inhuman strength.
Brutes. Yeah, and they mentioned that Philippe is kind of a weakling, little,
Yeah, and after what happens later on in the story to Jacques Solal, right?
That's right. It says here, Philippe claims the man or ape murdered the girl because of jealousy, but by showing us Philippe's tirade when Lewis questions him, when he starts going like, she was a whore, and they have to drag him back to his cell. The implication is that Philippe actually is Natalie's murderer, and it was a crime of passion. Thus, the beast is perhaps more appealing than the man. So, I don't agree with that either, but I could see how someone could imagine that because of like the emotional outburst that he does.
I more agree with with what David said, that he might have sicked the ape on her. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because later, there are more murders of red-headed women the same way. So either it got a taste of it, or it was going to do it anyway, or,
Yeah, right. And Philippe's in prison.
Yeah, so he didn't do it this time. So
yeah,
definitely the ape did it, but whether or not it did it because it was jealous of her and Philip's relationship, or he got mad and ordered it to kill Natalie because she was with the ape.
Yeah,
and it made him angry.
Yeah, because they spend a lot of time. Clive spends a lot of time setting up like, these people are safe. These are the people you don't mess with. This is my friend, with a picture, right? This is my friend Louis. This is Catherine and me. We are friends, and anybody else it seems like it's kind of open season.
Mm-hmm.
But Philippe, like you said, David, either because he's a little more drugged up, he becomes more forthcoming, but he still doesn't want to think about why the ape murdered her, tell anybody about it, have the ape destroyed. This is fiction. It could be a story that I made it come true for a while. Even doesn't really understand how this happened or how he got to this point in a bit. Maybe I made that story true for a while. I guess he was so obsessed about it.
Yeah.
And he asks him, where is the monkey? And he says, well, he's here where you're not going to find him. And that's the end of the conversation, right? So, and he goes back to his cell. He's going to take that secret to his grave. And that night he actually finds a way to commit suicide. What does he do? He bites his wrists, right?
Yeah. He chews through his own wrists. It's horrifying.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. And even after he dies, there's another murder, like you said, like you brought up. There's another redhead woman that is found murdered brutally on the same day that I think Philippe is found dead, and they bury him.
During the ceremony, it's only Louis and his sister and the priest. They mentioned all his friends have abandoned him because he's a suicide and
accused of murder.
And I think Jacques Solal was there too.
Yeah, it's just...
That's right, his one person. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just Catherine, Louis, and Jacques, and the priest, and then they look off to the side. Jacques Solal sees a shape, right? Sees a guy. Yeah. And there's the beast. There's the man with the overcoat, like behind a tree looking, witnessing the funeral of his master. A little bit in the snow, in the ice, a little bit like Frankenstein, as Dr. Frankenstein dies in the boat, and then
with a big wide hat, kind of mask his identity.
Right. Yeah. So I thought that was very reminiscent of that.
Yeah.
And Jacques Solal says I'm going to follow him. He goes off, follows him. And of course, Louis, takes, Catherine home, and then he gets a phone call, and it's Jacques Solal. He's like, hey, I found out where he is. I'm at the Gare du Nord, and I found out it's in the basement of a number 16,
and Louis is like, don't go in there. And he's like, nope, too late. He hangs up the phone. Yeah.
Louis goes off to that place, and Jacques Solal is nowhere to be seen. And he goes into the yard of that building that he mentioned. And then I think he sees the door was unlocked, right?
Yeah.
Right. So he goes in, and it's just a regular messy room.
He sees the guy.
He sees the beast leave, right? Yeah.
He's watching the place, and he sees the person leave, and that's like, okay, now I know I can go in and look.
And he's walking more upright, and he's got his clothes, or like he put on his clothes properly this time.
Yeah.
And he's freshly shaven, hair everywhere, and a bed, rotten fruit with a cologne. And Jacques was not there.
And there's like the
but as he's going through the room
and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And as he's going through the room, he hears a noise in the closet, and like all of a sudden the body of Jacques falls off. Still
He's not even dead yet. And the ape had like pulled his
ripped his jaw off,
pulled his whole face off. Yeah.
Just
horrifying. And there's a similar kind of a scene in the Hellbound Heart where Frank grabs a guy's lower jaw and rips the whole jaw off.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is one of the coolest like sentences in the books of blood. It's like the creature had grabbed his lip and pulled it backwards like a baklava.
Balaclava.
It's like,
yeah, one of those,
balaclava,
like a ski mask sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Jacques is just in the death throes, right? In the death rattle. And he's like, oh my God. And he gets really, really upset, point where he almost becomes immobile with fear. For what looks like several minutes, he's just there holding Jacques Solal and
then he goes and hides in the closet with him.
It's about how his neck hurts so bad he thinks he's going to die.
Yeah.
You know. But then he can see a gap through the wardrobe and he sees the beast come back with a red-headed woman who's seems to be a little
prostitute
and out of it.
Because she's taking drugs. She's taking pills. The monkey has pills and money in his room.
Ape.
And apparently seduces... Yes, ape.
It's like nails
I'm going to call him orangutan.
To me. It's like when people say nuclear.
I know. No, you're right. You're right. It's my bad. Yeah, so he kind of seduces women by providing them with money and drugs. And they think, hey, a John's a John, you know, whatever. And so she gets in there and she's like talking to him, but he's not answering much. He's just kind of grunting. Apes can't speak. Or at least we think they can.
Yeah.
And she takes off her clothes and she kind of does the thing with the monkey, the ape. And meanwhile, poor Louis is stuck inside the closet with the body of Jacques Solal on top of him, and he's kind of like huddling. And it's like, we're not told how long he stays like that, but of course, you know, after a while, he's an old man. He starts kind of feeling pain all over his body, like his back is killing him, his legs are killing him. He passes out.
Yeah,
and then he wakes up
like numb. Yeah.
Yeah. We've all been there, waking up in a weird position, but he wakes up when the monkey kind of opens the closet door, and I was like, oh, and the woman is like, hey, who's that one, Philippe? Do you want me to go with this one as well? Just give me back the pill.
The orangutan puts his hand out to kind of lift him out of the closet.
Yeah.
And on the wall,
moment, Louis knew that he wouldn't hurt him.
Yeah, because he saw a picture on the wall of Louis, Catherine, and Philippe together when they were much younger.
Yeah. So the monkey recognizes him from the photo. We don't know exactly what Philippe would have told him about Louis, but maybe he knows that he's a friend. And as such, he kind of points at the woman who's on the bed and mentions his name, Louis. He says it almost like naming an equal, right? So he's taken the identity of Philippe, his master. He probably wears Philippe's clothes. He even has like a chain with a cross around his neck.
Yeah.
A gold
that
chain.
Philippe got from Louis.
Yeah.
When they were younger. He bought it.
Yeah. Which makes Louis even more angry at Philippe for this act of desecration. He says to the woman, this creature is not even human. It's like, whatever. And the man is so messed up by seeing this. He's so messed up about the story, about the weight of his legacy, about the fact that it was his family story that got into Louis's head and made him somehow want to reproduce the story. Yeah. That is just kind of overridden with like this exhaustion. It's like where Dupont's stories represent the triumph of logic. In this story, it represents the exhaustion of logic. Louis is done. And like, he knows what happened. He understands now all the facts in the story, but he's like, yeah, this is not for me. You know, he's just not going to take it. Yeah. And he's completely destroyed by this.
He mentions that Catherine too their relationship is ended. He can't ever go back to her. And they talk about how, so his friends are lost to him now. This farce has been presented to him in such a way that he can't deny it. It's not really his fault, but it kind of is. And he's even more resigned to the fact that he's just over it all. He's over Paris. He's over his work. He hasn't paid in 5 years. He thinks the people who buy his paintings are morons. Yeah. He just goes down to a doom spiral hard.
He was planning on taking care of Catherine, for the rest of her life or his life. And then now that's gone too, right? I mean, he's just throwing everything away.
In some ways, it's a version of what we imagine what civilization is, because we keep hearing about, Paris being such a civilized city. But in this manner, it was the civilization, not the savagery, that became the corrupting force when it came to this ape. It was the fact that Lewis wanted him to, he tried to make him like a facsimile of a human.
Mm-hmm.
And in doing so, he ended up creating a monster.
He took away his innocence because he can't go back to the jungle.
Yeah.
So he has to live this new way that's alien and foreign to him.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think this ape's tragedy is that it wants to be human. And in trying to be human, that's what makes him more monstrous. Otherwise, it would just be a regular ape that we all know that exists. But an ape trying to be a human, that's monstrous.
Yeah, right. Well, and this isn't the only ape becoming more evolved in Clive Barker's stories, right? We've got Raoul from the books of the art. We have other animals where this happens. Like there's the Pigeon and Teresa about a turtle and a parrot that become evolved accidentally because of an angel. And so they can talk, and suddenly they're on the run from this angel that has to correct its mistake. And then animal life, right? I think we have talking animals in animal life.
If I could jump on what you said, for example, in The Great and Secret Show, I established a parallel, which is imagination. And this story becomes a dangerous force because it tries to make the intangible tangible. It tries to give life, much like the myth of Candyman becoming alive, because a lot of people believe in it, or because of The Great and Secret Show, where the art is almost like this power where imagination becomes physical, or you can translate between the living world and the dream world, where imagined things are real, dreams and nightmares take physical form. And in this story, it's a bit that. It's a bit Lewis trying to make this story real. And in bringing that story to our world, he created a monstrosity.
Yeah, and there is a little, I mean, it's not supernatural, but in a way it kind of is, because this ape can do things that it shouldn't be able to do. I mean, if apes could talk, they would, right? Because they can do sign language. So their vocal cords can't do it.
Oh, yeah.
And Jane Goodall or the Gorillas in the Mist lady, they would have been able to get them to talk if that were even possible.
Yeah, exactly.
I think you're thinking about Coco the gorilla, right?
Yeah.
Well, no. Who's the scientist who studied the gorillas?
Yeah,
that was the movie
Gorillas in the Mist. Yeah, that was Jane Goodall, I think. Yeah.
No, she was the chimpanzee lady. She's the one who just recently passed away.
No, Gorillas in the Mist was a different scientist.
Sigourney Weaver.
I know, but
in the movie, yes,
but not in real life.
I can't remember. I don't remember what her name was.
She got murdered.
Diana Fossey, I think.
That's it.
Yeah, there we go.
If that were possible to get apes to actually talk, you think one of them would have been able to do it because they had so many decades studying with them.
Right.
So you're right. This is not supernatural, but there's something weird going on because now all of a sudden this ape shaves.
Yeah.
And presents more of a human face, wears clothes, walks upright all the time, learns how to manipulate prostitutes with drugs and money.
Yep.
You know, and actually uses words and says Louis and Philippe and.
Yeah. And also a little bit of this idea of him dressing up and putting that cologne to disguise his ape smell. It's almost like the facade that we put on to hide the beast within. Or,
he really overdoes it. Cause I mean, I don't really know that I've seen orangutans at zoos. I don't remember them having like a really strong smell. Maybe they do.
Yeah, imagine they do.
Yeah. I was sitting behind, bulletproof glass. So you don't know.
Yeah.
Right. Philippe definitely is kind of like a Dr. Moreau or a Frankenstein. And in the sense that he tries to make a story, create a fictional story into reality. I think that is an interesting topic there. Also, Catherine is kind of a cold, aloof person, and her brother is very emotional, very sexual. And I think ultimately there's a contrast there too. He doesn't go back to Catherine because what would be the point of telling Catherine that, your brother humanized an ape and that was what killed these women? It's like, I don't think she would be able to take it.
Well, I think she wants to know the truth. I mean, I think there is a point. He probably should have told her what happened. She wants to know that her brother's innocent. In his mind, it's like, who cares anymore? He died. So what difference does it make? I can't get him out of prison now.
Yeah. And
But
also, I think just
for
Lewis
Catherine,
can't
he should
stand
have.
the truth. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
like, he can't handle the truth.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you remember the Clint Eastwood movie, Any Which Way But Loose? And he had an orangutan in the passenger seat. Yeah, Clyde. And he'd go, right turn, Clyde. And he would signal out the window. And he made him punch somebody in the face by saying that.
Oh, that's great. Of course, after he walks out of the room, Lewis is so distraught by the truth that he just decides that he's just going to end it. He's just going to end it here. He goes to one of the little bridges in the Seine. He climbs up the railing of the bridge, and then he jumps into the ice water where the ice flows are going, and he only comes up a little bit, and then he goes back into the current, and someone was walking past and it's like, what was that? And the other says, I don't know. And that's just it. It's like, it's gone.
I have a hard time with that because I don't see why Philippe should blame himself. And not Philippe, I mean,
Lewis, yeah.
Should blame himself that much for that. I mean, he told that, he heard that story. He liked that story from his grandfather that his great uncle was Auguste Dupin, but that doesn't mean he went out and, trained an ape and tried to recreate the story himself. Maybe he's like, okay, that's a great story. I'm going to be a painter now. He didn't decide, well, I'm going to see if this is real.
Something about toward the end of your life too. Had he been maybe younger, he would have maybe more resolve to get through it. But since he was such kind of at the end of his life and end of his career and end of everything, he's just like, chuck it all. It's like, no, I'm dead.
Excellent point. The emotional stranding, Catherine and Lewis after Philippe commits suicide, they're not just mourning for Philippe, but mourning for the loss of their youth, their loss of their bond, aging. As people get older, in general, not all people, but as people get older, usually they start losing friends to the point where they become solitary and alone. And, it's hard to connect with other people when you're a certain age. And that's the state that, Lewis is in at the end of the story. Happy ending. Well, after that horrible suicide scene, we see the ape. The ape is coming out of his apartment as the day is starting to rise and the sun comes up, and
holding
he's walking
hands with
arm in arm with the redheaded lady.
Yeah,
and they're going up the steps to the Sacré-Cœur Basilica in Montmartre.
Yeah,
and nobody questions it.
The ending is totally ridiculous in a way that's kind of like one of his plays. The whole thing kind of feels like it was written like one of Clive's plays.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does. I really enjoyed this. The way that he connected Lewis with Dupin, and then the whole thing in the beginning of like Rue Morgue being, was it real? Wasn't it real? We don't know. A lot of stuff has changed. So it's like, gives that a little bit like, we don't know if Rue Morgue was a real thing.
I like your comparison to The Forbidden or Candyman, right? This idea that fiction can be so powerful that it can become real, and
blur the line between reality and imagination.
Yeah.
They even mentioned the story too about when he was talking about the Rue Morgue. Did it exist? And given his points, does it even matter?
Yeah.
He mentions that too, that for a younger person, those details matter, but the older you are, that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
What you decide to make of it is what counts toward your reality.
Yeah. And what's the truth of the truth of the story?
Yeah.
It's kind of a nihilistic ending.
It is totally.
Yeah.
Well, a little bit also like the ape doesn't get caught, or at least we don't see him get caught, but he's just, the end is pretty open ended. Also a little bit like how art can outlive their creators and go on to have a life of its own.
We don't know what's going to happen to that poor lady.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Is he going to just kill her and keep killing, or is that he's done now?
Yeah.
Is he kind of like come more into his own? He's now decided he is Philippe, and now he's just going to have a redheaded girlfriend. And
right. Yeah. I mean, and before he was he just kept considering redheads the enemy of Philippe, but Philippe's dead. And so maybe he wasn't going to kill her now.
The ape does attack another woman during the story on the day that Philippe is being buried.
Yeah.
And what's explained is that I think that he imagines that it was in the throes of some animalistic passion that happened.
Mm-hmm.
So even with all the shaving the body and trying to be human, it's still at its core a monster, a beast.
Yeah.
The savagery comes up. And so it's only a makeshift human. It's only a monster out in the world, as many other monsters. They even mentioned at the beginning how a lot of horrible atrocities were committed after that story of Rue Morgue. I mean, Paris went through World War II, rise of Hitler and all that. So these people, Louis, Catherine, and Philippe, they lived through that. So they've seen how inhuman man can be towards each other. Still very much in the style of Clive Barker, and a great bookend for this book, I think.
Yeah. And that was one reason I wanted to read the Poe story first before this one, is just to see the difference in the style. And it is, I mean, it's still Clive Barker's style. It's not written like a detective mystery. I mean, I think he knew going into it that we were all going to know right away what the murderer was, right? As soon as there's a description of this weird looking hairy man with a trench coat and a hat and hiding in the shadows, we were all going to know that was an ape, because that's what the story is about. It's a sequel story.
But how do we get there? And
yeah, I guess that's the more interesting part, right? Is how did this happen? What motivated Philippe to do all this? And
how do we get here?
Yeah. One more thing that I would like to say. The Dr. Moreau reference that I was making earlier, it's about a man who tries to humanize monstrosity and instead releases monstrosity into the world. The animals kind of humanoid in shape. So now it's an island full of monsters that are just trying to hunt and kill. It's been a while since I've read H.G. Wells' story, but I did enjoy a lot. There's been a couple of movie adaptations. One of them was Richard Stanley, Island Dr. Moreau with Val Kilmer and Marlon Brando, which is a weird story. I haven't read the story
or seen any of the films.
Yeah. And then there was a black and white movie too.
An old one. Was it Bela Lugosi in it?
Bela Lugosi plays the lawgiver. He plays the guy who recites the rules to the other animals, being an animal himself. He is in that movie. That's a really good movie. I do recommend that too. Yeah, but here it's almost like instead of being an island, it's like Paris. And instead of, civilization becomes a laboratory where this monster is released, which is,
it's almost like a reverse of a werewolf story in a way, right? Because they're instead of making a human into an animal, it's making an animal into a human.
Yeah. Very, interesting story. And the protagonist is completely shattered at the end, which I could understand. When he realizes that the boundary between man and beast, it's an illusionary line. I mean, the fact that the ape is walking hand in hand with the woman in a place that's got so many tourists and nobody is even batting an eye. Pretty weird. It's pretty weird.
Yeah. I put this out as a question to see if there's anybody had any thoughts about this story, but didn't really get much feedback on it. I mean, we had people clicking on Reddit and Facebook and stuff, but yeah.
I had forgotten this story myself. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think that, without going out of their way and rereading it, it's probably, it is probably not it's not like In the Hills, the Cities or Rawhead Rex, where everybody remembers those.
And there weren't any major adaptations except for one comic book adaptation from Eclipse Comics. I think this originally came out in the early 90s, on the Tapping the Vein volumes. And then, you know how some of those stories got released as their own little graphic novels, Revelations, Rawhead Rex. There was one called The Life of Death, which has the story, The Life of Death, adapted and as the first story. And then the second story is this one, New Murders in the Rue Morgue. And this one was adapted by, let me check. It came out around 92, I think, or 93. It was adapted by Steve Niles. Yes. Yeah. The same Steve Niles who later created the 30 Days of Night movie.
Nice.
Yeah. With art by Hector Gomez.
I met him once.
Steve Niles did a lot of the work on these Eclipse graphic novels, and he also wrote the Night of the Living Dead London with Clive Barker. That two issue Night of the Living Dead story.
And I think it's a good pairing of The Life of Death and New Murders in the Rue Morgue because they're both two stories about decay, death, and obsession. Cool.
Coming next, we'll have our Kickstarter thanks, more news, hopefully more interviews, and the next book club of Blood would be starting Volume 3 with Son of Celluloid.
Oh, that's a great one.
Yeah.
It's a good comic adaptation too. Yes.
Or Barrios Cancer. I love that. This is another great story. Thanks for joining us, David.
Yeah, thank you so much. I love talking about Books of Blood.
Yeah, it's always great to have your insight.
And this podcast, having no beginning, will have no end.
Thank you for joining us, and we hope you have subscribed or followed our podcast. You can find the Clive Barker Podcast wherever you find audio. Show notes for this episode, as well as news and reviews, can be found at our website at www.clivebarkercast.com. The Clive Barker Podcast, or BarkerCast, is an independent editorial podcast and blog that's not affiliated with Clive Barker or Seraphim Inc. This is a labor of love by the fans for the fans. You can chat with us on our Facebook BarkerCast listeners group, our Facebook page, Reddit, Blue Sky, or our Discord server. Have you already bought our book? The BarkerCast Interviews Occupy Midian, available in Amazon hardcover, Kindle, and Apple Books. Join our Patreon and become a patron to get access to exclusive stuff, pick an episode topic, or maybe join in the discussion. You can also buy a t-shirt in our TeePublic store. Just go to teepublic.com/stores/BarkerCast. Leave a voicemail for us on the SpeakPipe link on our blog and we might put it in the episode. Opening and ending music generously provided by Ray Norrish.
Thanks for listening.